Thank you very much for taking the time to join us on this special day. It's a very special day for 301 Toronto, and we're very graced and blessed to have the presence of our guests here today, the Honourable Mayor Tory and the Honourable Deputy Mayor, Councillor Holiday. I want to say thank you very much for attending this particular event, and I also want to reach out a special thank you to Josie Sholey, the Deputy Mayor of the City of Toronto, and Lawrence Ada, the Chief Technology Officer and partner that helped make this happen today. I also want to give a special thank you to Chris Murray that couldn't be here to attend, but I also want to thank everyone for their leadership and partnership through this event. I normally have the saying that it takes a village to raise a family. And in this particular situation, it truly has taken a village. It's taken about 29 divisions, 150 staff, and a lot of hours and a lot of passion to make this happen. I also want to greatly and sincerely thank some people that are no longer with us, but have been part of this journey, and also to the 301 staff that's make this happen. With that, I'd also like to say thank you very much to the mayor and pass the mic. Thank you very much.
Well, Gary, thank you and good morning. And you can see behind me what you see, if you hadn't figured out what it is that is the 311 call center. And a lot of people call centers and never really know where they are and who's answering. And we have a very dedicated team and a really state-of-the-art facility here to try and deal with literally millions of phone calls who come here over the course of time on all kinds of different things. And today is a day on which we can be celebrating that we found a way and actually implemented a way as of just now to do this much better. And of course, it was very much a team effort. And I'm joined in particular today, as Gary mentioned, by Deputy Mayor, Councillor Stephen Holiday, by the Deputy City Manager, Josie Sholey, and by the Chief Technology Officer, Lawrence Etta, and of course, Gary himself, who is responsible. And if you can imagine that job of having accountability for the call center and its functioning and for the resolution of a lot of the matters, because in the end, you tend to hold to account the people that you call or that you email or that you get in touch with. And we're trying to make that whole process as easy and as comfortable as possible. I was determined, especially in this last 4 years, to modernize the way the city dealt with its customers, because I look at you people out as customers, people out across the city, that we had to do better in terms of just making it much easier for you to communicate with the city in different ways, to get problems solved, to bring things to our attention. And today is a big day in actually moving that a huge step forward. There have been small improvements along the way, and they all count, but this is a big improvement happening all at once. And 311 really is the gateway to the city and to the city administration and to the services we provide and to all of the resolution of different problems that you might encounter as a resident of the City of Toronto. It was hugely important, of course, during the pandemic, 311, and residents relied very heavily for answers to questions about public health, for information about how to go and get different things done, about the current state of affairs when it came to restrictions and other kinds of things that were in effect. 311 fielded 2 million calls during the last 19 months, the period of the pandemic, and that was added to by 190,000 emails, 60,000 web requests, and 4.6 million online knowledge-based views, people looking for information and really going no further than that, not interacting with us, but looking for information. And so this is an important place where people get information, and especially during an emergency, which the pandemic was and is, it proved to be something that was a vital sort of heart of the whole operation of the city in terms of getting information to people. The pandemic also dramatically accelerated our efforts as a city to modernize. There's nothing like an emergency sometimes to cause you to do things faster than you had to do them before, because we had no choice. For example, even just the whole notion as simple as something as simple as people working from home, which a lot of our operators continue to do for reasons of public health, was not something that was just available to us at the drop of a hat, but people got things done very quickly to the point where in a matter of days, our operators here that help you with your problems and issues were able to operate in that fashion. I had begun a push to go digital on a much broader basis, long before the pandemic, but the pandemic certainly helped us to speed things up. And this is, if there are any good news stories out of the pandemic, and there are some, even though there was lots of tragedy and lots of heartache, this is one of them. In the wake of COVID-19, we've seen how important it is to have more digital and self-serve options so that people aren't necessarily waiting in line. They can choose their time to get their information or to file their request and do it in that fashion. And of course, that's easier for us too, because it spreads things out over different platforms and different ways of doing things. So that is why I'm so proud to announce that as of this morning, we are launching the new 311 customer experience. And I think you'll find it is much different and much better, much better in terms of your experience dealing with 311 and getting service from your city. The change comes after a very successful pilot. Because when you're dealing with millions of calls and in the very heart of the city's administration in terms of the contact we have with you as citizens, obviously we wanted to just make sure we tried this out before we just flipped a switch. And so while the switch has been flipped, it does result after a period of time when we looked at how this all worked with, in particular, the clients of Toronto Water and municipal licensing and standards. This enabled people during that time to book appointments for select Toronto water services, for example, via the online self-serve portal or by calling 311. The pilot increased 311 productivity. It reduced the average time that was needed to create a request for service by a citizen or a resident of the city. It made booking appointments much easier and that you could effectively do it yourself. It enabled proactive communications from the city to residents regarding appointments, so a reminder that an appointment is coming up, for example, and it facilitated an improved information flow between 311 and Toronto Water. They could share more information more easily back and forth. And all of this allowed for more accurate and timely information to be shared with residents and businesses inquiring about a status update. So we're now prepared for and launching into phase 2, which sees through an entire transformation of 311. From the moment you now visit toronto.ca/311 on your computer or mobile device, you'll enter a modern, upgraded platform which offers you more choice and improved service. Here are just some of the things that the new platform will allow you to do. More than 600 city service requests can now be made online, and that is a dramatic increase over what was the case before. You'll now be able to track your request, very much as you do with a parcel that you're looking for. You can now track your requests from beginning to end using 311 and real-time status updates, which will be sent to your personal device if you wish to have that via text or email, whichever you prefer. So you no longer have to call in and ask what's going on with my request. See a pothole? You can now take a photo and send it to us so our crews know exactly where to look and what they're dealing with. 311 knows exactly what you've requested when it comes to a number of different things in this regard. And the idea here is to create a more efficient, but also a more inclusive and equitable city. And that includes language translation capabilities. The entire site can handle 50 languages on its own, in effect, through technology. And that's not to mention or to take away from the 180 languages that are available over the phone, which has been the case for some time. But now the site itself can deal with you in about 50 different languages that are handled by the site itself. The system itself, the site, will have an improved knowledge base, so it will know more in response to your inquiries for information, which, as you heard during the pandemic, was a very substantial source of calls. People just looking for information. They didn't need to talk to anybody or file a service request, but they did need information. All of this will make a real difference for people who use 311 because they'll be able to do more on their own when they want to do it and be able to track and follow up on the different things that they want the city to do for them or responses they want from the city to service requests they have made. Information will be centralized, so this allows 311 to manage all of the interactions with you as a resident of the city in one place, as it were, so they can see the different things that you may be needing from your city. And of course, in the end, faster, better service results in less cost. And this is something that we have been very committed, Deputy Mayor Holliday, myself, our budget chief, Gary Crawford, so that we can both restrain expenditures and keep your taxes down, but at the same time provide you with better service. It's more for less is really what we're trying to say we are trying to do here in terms of this modernization of the government. We're looking forward to hearing from residents as to how they like the new system. I hope people will understand that as we implement it, and it's literally been done in the past day or so, that it's going to take some continuing getting used to by the people who offer you the service at the other end of 311, and it will take some getting used to for you as customers, because when you look at the site, it looks different, but I think it looks different in a better way, in that we've even, for example, placed on the portal the first thing you see will be the areas most frequently accessed or information that you want or service requests in the most frequent areas. At the core, the improvements rest on client management improvements on the hardware side and the commitments of having multiple channels seamlessly integrated together by way of improved software. You'll want to know how much it costs. We have invested $5 million to make these improvements possible, but it also should lead to better service for you and ultimately less costs per service given, simply because it will be done so much more efficiently, and you'll be able to candidly do more of it yourself in terms of getting to what you need faster on your own. And that's going to be more satisfying, we hope, for you, both during the remainder of the pandemic as it recedes and after. I should tell you that this stuff doesn't happen, of course, by accident. We have a great team here. Deputy City Manager Josie Cioli, I mentioned. Lawrence Etta, our Chief Technology Officer, who has been an instrumental partner in this, and Gary York, who runs the call center. And I should tell you as well that it involves private sector participants. Salesforce have well-known software. And I can remember not too long ago, they employed a handful of people here in the city of Toronto. Today, they employ hundreds of people. And they, together with Catalyst, have been instrumental in causing this to happen, supplying us with the software and the expertise to make this happen. This is your city, and this is your city government. It is not only the city government that you put in place, it is here solely and exclusively to serve you, and you pay the bills. And we want to make sure that you are proud of the way in which you're treated, proud of the way in which your city government operates in a way that is hopefully sensitive and responsive to your needs. And we believe this improved 311, which really is at the very heart of how we interact in most cases with you, is something that you'll be very happy with. And so I do want to thank everyone for the changes that have been made under their leadership. I know these things do take time, but it's very important when it comes to something that has the volume this has, that we get this right. And I think we've got it right. We have a better system that's going to better serve our residents. And somebody at the elected representative level of all this that has been instrumental in helping to fight for this kind of thing, and also take a look at how we're doing, which is very important, through the audit committee, which he chairs, is our Deputy Mayor, Stephen Holiday, and I would ask him to come and say a few words now.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning to everybody. I really want to acknowledge the leadership of you, Mayor Tory. I remember just after the 2018 election, we met in your office, and the conversation was about modernization. It was about innovation. It was about pushing digital technologies, just as you mentioned. That's been a number of years since then, but I've been part of a journey, and I'm really glad to be here today, recognizing an important milestone in that. I think it's also important to recognize the General Government and Licensing Committee under the leadership of Councillor Paul Ainsley that set some of the groundwork for this technology. I've had the privilege to serve with Councillor Ainsley on that committee to really see these things happen, just as we talked about a few years ago in your office. I also like to acknowledge the Technology Services Division and, of course, the team at 311 who have worked so hard to make this change that's going to make things better for the citizens of the city. I think this is a tremendous step forward. It's a better all-around experience. There's different options. Not only is it just a call center, but there's also an ability to go online and make service requests and get to valuable information. Mayor, just as you mentioned, there are two different types of service requests. There are those that ask for some sort of an action, but there's also those that are seeking information. I think this makes it much easier to get to that information. 1.4 million calls a year. I know a good portion of those are asking for different types of services, but it's the ones that are citizens that are seeking information that gets to them much quicker through the system. I think that's really important because that provides data to us as a city, 1.4 million data points, and that number is going to go up as citizens use the system and access the information they need. Not only do we learn about what it is that people are interested in fine detail, we also learn about ourselves as an organization and as a provider of services. One of the features in this new system is a follow-up with citizens to ask them how their experience went. That teaches us about ourselves and is a vital part of the continuous improvement loop. It's your choice of channel. Whether it's the phone, whether it's your mobile device, whether it's your computer, it doesn't matter. You still can get to the service. More than 600 online and over the phone different services. Mayor, the other thing you mentioned is something that we can do to keep up with other technologies and other services out there in the community, and that is a follow-up on the status of your request. That's something new. I think that's really exciting, and I think that will be a positive change that citizens will see and appreciate. And finally, all of the data that we can use as an organization. It offers us a tremendous opportunity to continue to evolve our services and make changes to meet the needs and wishes of the citizens across this city. Mr. Mayor, I'll welcome you back to the podium to take questions about this service and about this exciting change.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Tory, Deputy Mayor Holiday, and Gary York. We'll now take questions from the media. It's one question, one follow-up. First up, we have Stella Dupie from Radio Canada. Go ahead.
Hello, thanks for taking my question. So I wanted to know, Mr. Mayor, how worried are you about some services cuts at Metrolinx because of vax policy this morning?
Well, we continue to, take the approach that we want to convince as many of our employees, as I'm sure Metrolinx is doing with theirs, to get vaccinated. Because in the end of the day, that is going to be the best guarantee we have that people will be healthy, but also that services can easily be maintained. I can't speak for Metrolinx, but I'm sure they, like us, have plans in place to make sure that whatever may come as a result of the push to get people vaccinated in order to protect their health and the health of the public, that those plans will be put into place as needed, if needed, so that service can be maintained. And that's our commitment as well as a city government through all the different services that we offer to people. But obviously, the key to this is to convince people, as we're trying to do in a very measured and reassuring and informative way, to get vaccinated, because we believe that's the best answer.
And my follow-up question is, what kind of services disruptions should Torontonians expect when city workers will start being suspended or fired because of vax policy?
I will repeat again something I've said over and over again, and I will continue to say it, that while there are meetings going on as we speak between those who have not yet been vaccinated and who we hope will get vaccinated and management at the city, that our hope is that those people can all be persuaded to get vaccinated. In the event some of them can't and they are not able to be with us at work as a result, then we have plans in place to make sure that for the average resident of the city of Toronto, that there is very little to no impact on the services they receive from us. I think you'd expect us to have those plans in place, and we will do the best we can to make sure, as we've done during the pandemic itself, to provide service to the people of the city of Toronto in whatever circumstances come our way. But we really hope that the number of people who this affects will be very small in number in the end, and that everybody will get vaccinated because they know it's good for them and good for the people they work with and good for all the residents of the city of Toronto.
Thank you. Next up, we have Caitlin Lee. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Yeah, good morning. In regards to the 311 upgrade, you mentioned that the pandemic prompted this. What kind of issues were being encountered that are being improved on? Was there a particular kind of call that went up during the pandemic?
Well, let me address a couple of things, and then I'll perhaps ask Gary to come back up. First of all, just to correct what I may have not said very clearly. The 311, transformation was well underway before the pandemic. In fact, I was over here, maybe the last time I was in this building before we stopped going to each other's buildings with the pandemic, was for a meeting to talk about this transformation and how it would come about and the investment that we were prepared to make as a city government to transform 311. And so this was underway well before that, really in furtherance to a commitment that I made in 2018 that we just had to do a better job of modernizing our delivery of city services to people. So that was, what the pandemic did, I guess, if nothing else, was it laid bare some of the ways in which, when you had an influx of a certain kind of call, or in this case, huge numbers of requests for information, that the more we could make those kinds of things automated, if I can use that somewhat old-fashioned expression. In other words, people could self-serve and could get more of that information online themselves rather than talking to a live agent. This was going to be not only more satisfying for them, but also very cost-effective. I learned when I was responsible for big call centers when I was in the telecom business that, of course, the cost of dealing with an inquiry online is very, very small, because people are doing putting in the information themselves and receiving it back from the portal. The cost of a telephone transaction is much, much higher. for all the reasons I think people would expect. They can see the call center here. They know we have to employ people. They take longer on the phone to have discussions, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just more more costly and also can take longer. And then finally, the worst of all worlds in the sense of cost is if we have to send somebody out. So the more problems we can solve by talking to people online, whether it's by text or email or by phone, and resolving problems in that way, or getting the information to them just on their own, the better it is for cost effectiveness. So those are all things that we took into account. But perhaps in terms of the changing nature of calls at the call center, I can ask the person in charge of the call center, Gary York, to come up and just answer that question for you.
Thank you, Mayor Tory. I think the best way to put it in terms of opportunity, COVID provided an opportunity in which maybe some resistance to change was subsequently reduced. So one thing to be very clear about in terms of transformation, this endeavor has been over 5 years in the making. And in 2019, we actually went to GGLC to do a tour and a demo about 301 and the new steps that we would take. So we've definitely had a plan and a plan in place for the last 3 to 4 years to make this happen. It just coincidentally happened when COVID happened, and we took advantage of this opportunity. One of the things that also allowed us to accelerate is the ability to work remotely and to manage our staff and our business, both on-prem and also remote environment, which facilitates hybrid and also facilitates a better business continuity environment. The last thing that we've learned through COVID is our staff also needs support through this particular endeavor. It's a lot of emotion, a lot of things that happen through our calls and interactions, and we just need our public to understand. And we're here to service, but we're also here to listen and to make sure that we create a positive environment of change and accountability. Thank you very much.
Caitlin, do you have a follow-up?
No follow-up, thanks.
And then David Rotter from the Star. Go ahead, Dave.
Hi there. My question is for Mayor Tory or anybody else that wants to field it. It's great that 301 is operating more efficiently, but there's still a lot of services that the city is saying have been suspended due to COVID and not come back. And I'll give 3 examples that were all from this month. People complaining about construction encroaching on city sidewalks. We're told we're not dealing with that unless it's like an imminent kind of vital danger. City not responding to complaints about idling trucks. That's on hold. And we saw civic activist David Meslin covering up 2 illegal billboards, saying that the city hasn't taken action on complaints about billboards that are not authorized. So it's great to have 311, but when are the city services actually going to be fully up and running that people can access them through this new system?
I'll say 2 things about that. First of all, we obviously have an obligation as a city to address, all of these different things that fit into some of the categories you mentioned and many, many more. There are 600 categories on 311 alone that people could call in about. But I think people will understand, I think they do, that during the pandemic, we had a couple of issues. One was the ability to deliver certain services, just the physical ability to do it because of public health restrictions. But secondly, and more importantly, the fact that we redeployed a number of our employees to help in places like shelters and long-term care and places like that. And I think most people would understand that without diminishing in any way any of the examples that have been given, the importance of saving lives, keeping people healthy, making sure we can provide those services to our most vulnerable people were very important things for us to focus on as a city administration and for me as mayor, which I did. Now we're reaching the stage where the pandemic is not over, but it's receding. And we are examining, I can assure the people of the City of Toronto that we're examining those services that have not been attended to in the same way during the height of the pandemic, with a view to seeing how we can restore those as soon as possible. And the city manager and others would tell you that we're engaged in those discussions. The answer is as soon as possible, but knowing that we still have a big challenge in front of us in terms of all that goes with the pandemic and the vaccination challenge and various other things that have involved other parts of the city administration, and the challenge that is created by the fact that people haven't been able to work as much in the city hall, albeit that most of our workers throughout the pandemic have been at work. Most of our workers don't work in the city hall or in an office. They work in parks, they work in yards, they work on the streets, and they've continued to do so. So that's something we're very mindful of, and the 3 examples have been brought to my attention that you mentioned, and we'll be having more to say about the restoration of those services, which will happen over the course of the next number of weeks as we hopefully can continue to emerge from the pandemic itself.
Thank you. And my follow-up is for Lawrence Etta. and it's on a slightly different topic, which is that I understand that the TTC was subject to a ransomware attack. And I'm wondering if you can tell us about that, and also have any other city services been subject to ransomware attacks?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I think based on the media reporting that has been happening right now, TTC is best placed to respond in terms of their technology as well as their cyber operation. So we are in consultation in the city with them, and I'm sure there'll be further reports in terms of the progress and the remediation that TTC is working on. But certainly within the City of Toronto, technology, and also my colleague, the Chief Information Security Officer, we are there to support TTC as they move forward. In terms of the city's environment, we have remediation and aspects that we continue to follow in terms of our cyber practices through our Chief Information Security Officer. And from the Chief Technology Officer standpoint with technology services and the division I lead, we are always vigilant in terms of ensuring that the city is kept safe. So we will continue to monitor utilizing some of our threat tools and some of our remediation tools of how we ensure that the city infrastructure is continued to be protected. Thank you.
Okay, that's it for today, everybody. Thank you and have a great day.